There it is.
I think we're live.
I think we are.
It's amazing technology, isn't it? Well, I'm going to dive straight into it and say, before we went live, we were talking about hiring and firing, and not really firing. We were really talking about hiring and what to look for, what to run away from. But just to recap, we kind of started a little bit earlier before we went live, but we were talking about more so looking for people that have energy and a competitive spirit. We're talking about athletes in particular because of their competitive spirit. And I was kind of making note that all of my clients, I always tell them to hire with, on attitude, on energy, on positivity, on optimism, on belief in your vision versus skill level. We can get skill level at, pretty cheaply and easily, no matter where we go these days. Yet we can't always get optimism and positivity and attitude and that competitive nature. And we're just talking about how hiring athletes is an interesting opportunity for people, not because you're an athletic company, but because they have a competitive nature and a positive nature a lot of the time, whatever they're driven by, whether it be the darkness or, some shining light, they have that competitive spirit built into them. And it's a little bit of a point of being able to flick the switch in them. And there's a lot of people out there that don't have that switch installed. They don't even know the switch exists. And we really have to find the people that have that switch so that we can flick it, because once that's flicked, they will see a spark and turn it, chase it down and turn it into a flame. So that's kind of where we were at. I'll hand it over to you for a second there, Mark, because we're just, talking about that. Some people do have that switch, some people don't. And, as I was saying, for my clients, when they're hiring, I'm telling them to hire on attitude and not so much on skill level. Skills can be taught, and sure, if they come with skills, that's a great advantage, but more so we're hiring on attitude and belief in where you're going.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Attitude is essential. You can have the world's best performer, but if they're a prima donna and they bring everybody else down, then it does no good. So a few thoughts that I had in the few minutes that we had between our previous chat and our going live here was like, if we're hiring athletes for essentially a team position, are we hiring individuals that are great at what they do, or are we hiring people that work well as a team together? And my inclination would be, I would focus more on the collaborative aspect of building a team around a unified vision. If everybody is, rowing in the same direction, and they're working as a unit together, as an integrated unit together to the same common goal that they all agree upon in a competitive way, then you really got some special chemistry going on there.
Yeah, I think
it's the individual performers that if it's all about them and all about their commitment and their attitude, independent of anybody else, I think we open ourselves up to some potential conflict.
Yeah, that's the Holy Grail, essentially. Having the team that's all working together. But I think even in that, we can have the individual as long as they have the right attitude and as long as they're aligned to the bigger vision. I think over time they can come together with the team. you know, if you had 4 or 5 individuals that were aligned to the bigger vision, their competitiveness and maybe their disagreement would actually add to the bigger vision of the you know, the bigger vision and the bigger target. They're going to solve problems, and actually, you know, they're working against each other to be the best, and being competitive is actually going to work towards the goal a lot better. And maybe that works better in a sales environment. So they're competing against each other to actually hit sales targets and that sort of thing. But it's, you know, I'm not against hiring the individual, but the key thing is correct attitude, energy, and align with the bigger vision. Because you can't teach attitude, and you can't, it's a long-term job teaching attitude, and you can't really teach energy. If people have that or they don't, and that's where, you know, we're talking about athletes, someone that's competed, and I'm talking about athletes that have competed at a higher level than just your average weekend soccer game kind of thing. If they've competed at a national level or regional level or, you know, international level, they've got a different fire burning inside them.
Mm-hmm.
And that person, like I was saying, there's a switch inside of them that they can click on that forces them to go to the next level. And it's almost a unconscious skill or unconscious gift that once they see that thing, once they identify with that target, they actually can't stop themselves from getting there. And that's I think the key, a big key. Whereas there is a lot of people out in the marketplace today that want a goal, but they'll never get there because they don't have that inner drive to actually push through everything to get to that target.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much right. There are a few factors that I would want to explore maybe a little bit deeper. And that is typically someone that is highly competitive are driven by the need to be recognized.
Sure.
Standing on the podium. That's one of the goals. They visualize themselves standing on the podium, getting the gold medal, all of that kind of stuff. And if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, recognition is the second highest level before self-actualization.
Right.
So it's like once you've been recognized as the best of the best, then the next level up, which that actualization, self-actualization, is reaching your fullest potential independent of competition. Competition doesn't enter the picture at that point. We've transcended the need to compete, the need to prove ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think as entrepreneurs, we get caught up in the noise of competitive relationships, competitive companies, competitive markets, competitive employees. We're focusing on the wrong things. The focus on the competition really should be how far can we go? What's the fullest potential for us?
Yeah, I think, like, I tend to disagree a little bit there, Mark, in the fact that, like, from my own perspective, you know, and being a competitor and competing at the highest level and representing my country and all that sort of stuff in business, I'm not so much distracted by everything as much as I'm looking for that spark, that thing that absolutely will drive me beyond, you know, I think, well, I'll go back to when I first started PLM, like being a product launch manager. And this is, 2009, late 2009. The goal at that time for me was 6 figures in a week, Like that goal, I spotted that, and it was like a switch that was flicked. And that was the target that had to be knocked over. And, I did that within the first 3 months and continued to do it, and, have had awesome success since. But the
That would
thing
be
is, but it's like, I think a lot of people out there now don't have that trigger either installed. It's just not there for them. So they're just kind of fumbling through life, or they haven't realized what that actual switch is, and they haven't seen that switch. So they're unable to have it flicked, and they're out there searching. And yes, they might get distracted a little by different bits and pieces, but the real problem is that they haven't actually locked onto what that target is for them. And because this is the thing, from a competitive nature, once I know that target, it's done. It's a done deal. It might take time, but the belief level goes through the roof. The resistance to hurdles and obstacles and all that is at an all-time high. There's nothing that can stop you from actually achieving it once you lock onto the right target. And I think a lot of people are out there and they're keeping themselves busy with knowledge and that sort of thing versus actually looking for what that switch will be for them. And it's a different level of awareness. It's like, I know myself in the past, probably four years into product launch formula, had lots of excesses. I realized in myself that I was keeping myself busy with other launches, just watching other launches. And I didn't need to continually learn and watch from a learning perspective of launches, because I'd already done, 15 or so by that stage that had been super successful. And I realized that I'd lost my path a little, because I got consumed by the knowledge versus looking for the next big switch. What was the next big target that had to be knocked over? And I think a lot of people suffer from that. They don't know what they're actually chasing. And they don't know, like, they kind of think about that they're chasing this imaginary thing and it might be implanted by someone else, but it's not really deeply embedded in them as something they need to do. Because I think if they were coming from that space, they'd be achieving their goals a lot faster.
I think that's a really good point. And what hits me, what I respond with is, I wonder how much the messaging in the world today influences your ability to be competitive and to set goals that are lofty goals. Or have we been told by so many people that it's all about average, it's all about making everything equal? How can you be exceptional if everything's supposed to be equal?
Yeah, I guess. And there's a big movement of, everyone gets a participation trophy instead of, should be no competing and all this sort of rubbish. I think that's a complete fraudulently, like, it's just a terrible way to teach our kids that should be no competition and everyone gets a participation trophy. I think it's an absolute joke.
Get rewarded for showing up.
Because deep down in our, like, caveman brain, we're all hierarchical and we're all chasing to get to the top. And if we're told, oh no, you don't have to compete to get to the top anymore, we all become entitled. And then there's the hands come out and it's like, where's mine? Where's mine? Where's my $1 million business? And it's like, And I think there's a lot of people out there at the moment going, where's my $1 million business, without having a true target, like a real fire burning inside them, where the passion takes over the obstacles and hurdles in the way. I mean, you put this back to hiring, And it's like, imagine having a team of 6 people around you that were competitive and see the same target as you, like see the same switch as, you know, whether it be a business or, you know, in a competitive nature, like we're talking about business here, but imagine if everyone on your team has the same goal and they're just as passionate about it. That's when big stuff happens. And I think a lot of people just hire because it's cheap and it's right, you know, gets the task done, or they hire on skill and the person's got nothing in common with where they're going or who they are or the conversation that's going on. You know, the attitudes aren't aligned. I think that instead of hiring for convenience and to save money and to think someone has skill is going to fit the mold. I tell a lot of my guys, you know, hire the girl behind the counter at the coffee shop. If she's got the right attitude and is interested and curious about what you're doing, she might be the best person for the job versus the person that comes with a resume. You know, as you know, I'm not a fan of resumes. I haven't had one for, I don't know how long.
Right.
Yeah, forever. And I think they're a bit of a joke. But, you know, it really does come back to the person that's going to bring the energy and like have that fire in the belly. You know, and I often get the question, you know, how do I pay my staff? You know, what's the right pay schedule and something? It's like, it's got to be fair, but there's got to be a piece in there that rewards them, because that competitive spirit will want to be rewarded for good work. They won't want to get the same weekly wage and feel like a number. You know, they won't want to feel like just a cog in the big machine. They'll want to feel like if I achieve something amazing, then I'm going to be rewarded for it. So I think building in rewards for the right people is an absolute no-brainer, because it adds to that excitement of achievement and that desire to go faster. And yeah, it can be very powerful, very powerful. Sorry, I was on a bit of a rant there, Mark. I didn't let you get a word in.
That's quite all right. I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought. Yeah, it's, you know, I think I look at this whole process as being a process of attraction.
Yeah.
I want to be seen as the beacon on the hill, the lighthouse on the point, that's sending out a signal that, you know, this is what I stand for. This is what my core values are. This is what's important. These are the results that I want to be known for, the legacy that I want to be known for.
Yep.
And I'm attracting those ships at sea that are lost in the dark, that are lost on the ocean, to that light on the hill. And I think the power of attraction really comes down to how do we communicate our vision in a way that attracts that attitude, regardless of the skill set. If you've got skills, that's great. But if you don't, you know, I'm more focused on people that will support the vision.
Yeah, I think, you know, in the process of hiring and, you know, conversing with people, it's got to be, like you say, more of a conversation about where we're going and what the vision is. I do this with my clients, as I was talking about earlier before we went live, that I feel that part of my job, you know, as a mentor, guide, strategist, whatever that title might be, is to implant a vision. And with that, remove the chaos around that vision and give a clear path to that. And I know that when I'm talking to people, and if they understand that and they gain clarity from our conversation, they start talking back to me as if it's their idea and their vision. And that's when I know that they've really cottoned onto it and they're going to run with it. I know that if, a week down the track, they haven't made steps towards that, that I haven't implanted that well enough. And it goes the same, in a hiring situation of our job as a hiring party is to really implant that vision versus just quiz them on how many skills they have. It's got to be about them becoming excited about what we're up to and coming towards us versus us trying to pull them in or judge them because, you've only went to school for 4 years. It's like, no, if that person is passionate and running towards you, with that energy, that's half the job done.
It's really interesting. I was reading an article last week, and there were a couple of comments in the article that were unrelated, but I put them together and it was like one of those aha moments. It's like people hire to fit the culture of a company.
Yeah.
They hire for fit. And the comment that really landed with me is we should be hiring for add. How does this person add to our culture, not fit our culture? Because if we fit the culture, you're moving towards status quo. But if you're adding to the culture, you're building for the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I I had a funny experience once at a live event. I was in Austin, Texas years ago, and I went to meet one of my clients that I hadn't met before face to face. And he'd been a client of mine for years. We'd done really, successful stuff together. It was fantastic to meet eventually, finally meet. And, we're sitting together and we're watching, I think it was Perry Belcher talk on stage. And he said, every person you hire should add $500,000 to your business without failure. And as I'm sitting there in the crowd next to my client, I'm thinking, how much have I made him this year? Because he might be a client of mine, but I'm actually an employee of his. And for me, it was lucky we'd done 780,000 or something at that point in the year. So we kind of looked at each other and had a bit of a chuckle and carried on the day. But it's, you want people that are going to add, and yes, add culturally, but also add financially. Everyone should be, and they may not be a direct kind of financial measure on what they do. There may not be that, but there does need to be that in some sort of way, whether that be just culturally. They have to be adding, and I like to think of that, like $500,000. If they're not adding $500,000 to your bottom line each year, then what are they doing? They're taking $500,000 because you're pouring energy into them. And this is the thing, it's an intangible, but it is very tangible if you're pouring energy into people and they're giving nothing back or not radiating and taking from that and growing from that. You can say you're putting $500,000 or more, maybe more into a person just through the energy and wisdom and knowledge and stuff that you pass on to your, ideal kind of employee. Oh, you're muted, Mark.
Sorry.
You're
certainly an interesting concept. I'm a huge believer in multiplication of effort. And to your point, it's not top line, it's bottom line. It's like top line is vanity, bottom line is sanity. Yeah. And I mean, that's what we're all about, is what's left over after all this is done. And, I get a little bit agitated with the businesses that are just driving by how many new customers did we add, how much revenue did we drive.
Yeah.
And they're spending every cent that they've got on ads to get new customers that are not profitable.
Yeah.
And then they're in love with the top line, but there's nothing on the bottom line.
Well, I mean, it shows a poor business person really, because they don't know their numbers. But you know, in that, I think that, you know, you have to really, like, at the end of the day, business is pretty basic. You know, it's simple math. And yet people aren't that simple. You know, so you really have to be careful, and you have to have a measure for the people that you bring on. You have to have some sort of tangible measure to, okay, even if they're the person that, you know, sweeps out the closet every third week, is that making me money, or is that just a drag on the business? Doesn't matter what that task might be that they do. Is it returning something to you? Are you making an ROI, or is it just a cost? Knowing the numbers, like when you get down to it, like every hire has to be a numbers, you know, it has to work from a numbers perspective as well. We're talking earlier about your own momentum in your business, Mark, and I often tell my clients this, that when they have the momentum is the time to hire, because the cash flow is good and all that sort of stuff. When you don't have momentum, it's hard to hire. And really, like, as I just said, hiring is a numbers game. It's like you have to pay for it, and they have to add something to the business. And if they don't, it's a bad hire. You know?
So I want to share something from a profit first perspective.
Sure.
And how to use profit first to grow your business effectively with employees. So let's just say that this employee position that you're looking for is a $75,000 a year role to get a really top-notch person.
Sure.
That's roughly $6,500 a month.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
6,250, something like that.
60.
Let's just round it down to 6,000. So from a profit first perspective, saying we need somebody in this role for 6 months, set up a bank account and pay that bank account as if it was an employee. And you're banking 6,000 a month. And if you can do that for 6 months in a row, being stretched because there's too much work, then you know that person can handle that position, and that your business can handle that position, and the money's there for the next 6 months. So it's a self-funding way to validate whether you really need to hire for that position or not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good little tip to try, because a lot of people say, I don't have the money. Well, practice it first.
Right.
You know, and there's no risk in that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not spending any money. You're putting it aside. You know, so it's a risk-free way to test yourself and see if it's warranted. In some circumstances, though, people get forced into hiring through momentum, and they need the people. I often say jump in and hire as those issues. You know, sometimes we don't have 6 months to kind of put money aside. Sometimes it's more, okay, we've got too much work, and you have to be able to do the numbers and do the cash flow on that, and you have to be able to project that. So, you know, as I said, I think hiring, you know, it does come down to a numbers thing, but more so comes down to an energetic and, you know, attitude type thing.
Yeah, there's so many pieces of this that are just moving target.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't just, you've got the attitude aspect, you got the financial aspect, you've got the you know, the business relief aspect. you got the simplification component. There's just a lot of things that are moving on, all together that are sort of like a connected string.
Yeah.
You pull one and it pulls two of these other things together, and you have to kind of just play with it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, and that's part of the reason why you can't always hire just on skill. People are people. People are
Right.
funny creatures, and I'm the weirdest of the lot, and you're pretty weird too, Mark. And the next person you meet's going to be just as weird as us, and we've all got our little quirks, and nobody's perfect, and that's why hiring on attitude and positivity and optimism and belief in the vision and that sort of stuff is going to be a better long-term decision versus hiring just on skill.
Mm.
It's doesn't matter whether you're looking for a partner in business or a partner in life. It's like you've got to be able to have someone that is aligned to you versus having to fight the war every time a decision is made, or fight the war every time you want to go in a direction, be it a different direction or a similar direction. It's got to be a collaboration, really.
Right. Right.
I think we might wrap this up here. We've been going for a little bit, but any last thoughts on how to hire to win?
Well, I just think these are some really good thoughts. There's a lot of information in the half an hour or so that we went through this, and without getting into specific things like, revenue per employee, what kinds of checks and balances should you look at? But there's definitely more to go into that at some future point. But the whole point on attitude and, finding the skill or developing the skills out of that, each case is going to be slightly different, but on balance, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. Yep. We will wrap it up there. Thanks again, Mark. Always good to chat, mate.
Always good.
I will make sure that I have a surf check for you next week. It's a beautiful sunny day outside. The surf is good, so I might actually go and grab some before doing a little bit more.
I think you absolutely should.
But we'll chat again soon. And as
Right.
always, awesome to chat, mate.
Thanks. Cheers.